Well, there you go.
I have a feeling it just won't send through. I'm gonna try and send one from the candy store.
Oh, okay, all
And see
right,
if
yeah,
it, and
because I
that would
might
rule
know.
that out.
What's your, hold on, did you get it?
I think so.
Oh, you're a genius.
It's crazy what happens when you reboot a computer.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Sometimes you just turn them off and then they work.
Yeah, and
Okay, so note to self, plug in the laptop before you start the meeting next time. Can you hear us now?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
yes.
Yep. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I heard you the whole time. So Jess decided to scoot and we were talking to each other because we could hear you go, do they know we can't hear them? And we're like, but Jess and I were just sharing some information and then she scooted. So I was going to finish her sentence, if I may. Kristen York used to be the director of the Sierra Small Business Development Center, and Jess was promoted to director 2 Julys ago. And I'm the associate director, so I work for Jess. So it's kind of a Tres Amigas. The three of us are running the ship with our outside independent consultant counselors like Clint to cover all 7 of our counties. So it's a big territory and it's difficult to be physically in every spot all the time. So Zoom kind of did save our world from that standpoint. And the other thing about a small business development center network, which is nationwide, Congress approved them in the late 70s. So why we seem to be the best kept secret, I'll never understand. Being a former banker, I would send all my customers to the SBDC to get help with their business plan or succession planning, exit strategies, strategic planning, forecasts of income and expenses, QuickBooks, marketing. So these services have been available. And again, it is taxpayer dollars, federal taxpayers dollars fund the networks, which are nationwide. And that's that.
Okay, I think we can get started then, right?
Yep.
So Leslie, if you can just thank Jessica on our behalf. Sorry we missed the end of it, but that's good. So, and thank you, Leslie. Being a former banker, you don't know how important that is for me because, you know, lending is not my forte, and just having you at the office in Truckee is really, really great. Between you and Kathy Elbadier, 2 former bankers, you know, I have a couple women here with like 40 to 50 years worth of banking experience, and also with the SBA. So it's really good for me because if I don't know the answer, call Leslie, call Kathy. But that's the way we work. We have this network.
We all have our expertise. We all have our areas of expertise. So.
So, and thanks everybody for coming. So, I just wanted to say that lending is one of the more complicated parts of running a business for entrepreneurs and small businesses. There's a lot of hoops to go through in applying for a loan. Everybody thinks you can go in and in the next week or so you get your money, and it just doesn't work that way. It usually takes, what, 3 to 5 months, would you say, Leslie, for the lending process to probably go through? So it's best to start as soon as you can if you need money. So one of the first things I'm going to start with is the FICO score. FICO is the Fair Isaac Corporation score that lenders use, that score to determine your credit risk, or your credit worthiness, I should say. And there's about 5 areas that are examined in coming up with your FICO score. And that's payment history, current level of indebtedness, types of credit used, the length of the credit history, and of course, new credit accounts. And I think these days, Leslie, you need a FICO score of about 680 to be in the game.
It's different everywhere, lender by lender.
Yeah, okay.
SBA
So-
will accept 650, yeah.
So oftentimes we get people that come in with rather low scores, and that is a challenge, but we can also help raise your credit score through you know, some ways too. So it's all legit and everything, but we can help you raise your score. Oftentimes people just aren't aware that there's something in their credit history that didn't get erased, and it's just holding them down, which is actually holding them back. So and so another thing that really complicates lending is that every time interest rates go up, this whole credit process can change, whether it's gonna be, does a lender want higher credit scores, or they want more equity in the game, more skin in the game, things like this here. So it's really fluid when interest rates are going up and up every month, things like that, So, and traditionally what happens when interest rates go up is sometimes the small borrowers get boxed out in favor of larger, more established and qualified borrowers. Lenders may demand more equity, like I said, to minimize their lending risk. And please know that 60 to 80% of small businesses go out of business in the first 5 years, so lending is a risk. And I think Leslie could tell you all about that. She was a banker, so. And then lenders, when rates go up, may demand stronger business plans, financial performance, and your proof of concept. In other words, how viable is your project? And that's the one thing you want to learn about a business plan. You write a business plan so you can get funding, so you can better manage your business, but you also, it's your opportunity to prove that your project or your business is viable, and it's actually going to improve itself. So there's two types of funding, for your business. You can use equity, cash and collateral, or you can use, debt from a commercial loan. So equity is kind of the basis for all of your debt. It's your skin in the game, as we call it. You have to have that, and that can be in the form of cash or collateral. Equity is first in making a loan. If you don't have equity, you're probably not going to get through the door. And it's always the last out, because you want to make sure that you maintain that equity and that your business maintains equity, so you can support that loan that you've made, so you can make those monthly payments and things like that. Debt has to be repaid. We all know that. It has to be guaranteed personally. It should be supported by your business cash flow. That's why you want to start the business, is to pay off your loans and your operating costs and make some money. So, and it requires collateral over and above the assets that are being financed. And debt is highly regulated. There's a lot of federal rules that go into lending, and banks just can't make up the rules as they go. They've got to follow a lot of policies and things like that. So now I want to talk about the 5 C's of lending. And you need to remember this if you ever make out a loan for a business, because this is how your banker and the underwriters are going to look at you, the 5 C's. First one is capacity. Next is capital, collateral, conditions, and character. And we'll go over those briefly, okay? And they are really the core to all lending. Your loan underwriter is going to be looking at those 5 C's, part of the underwriting process, and it's part of federal and state guidelines. So banks or whatever lending agency you're with has to look at all of those factors. That, again, those factors go into your FICO score. So what is capacity? It's your ability to generate the cash flow to repay the loan, and that should come from your business cash flow, so you can make your monthly loan payment. And it doesn't matter what stage of the game you are, capacity is important, because you may want to expand your business, or things like this here, pay off the note sooner than expected. So capacity is really important as to how well you can handle your current debt, if you want to take on more debt, whatever. Business plan. You have to have a business plan that will outline your equity, your business experience, industry experience, and the ability to shift to a contingency plan. Oftentimes, when we make a business plan with people, we ask for plan B. In other words, you lease out a spot, you want to start a business, and it doesn't make it. So you've been in business for 2 years, it's not working, but you got a lease for 5 years. So what are you going to do for the remaining 3 years? So you have to have some type of contingency plan. Financial pro formas, they're your monthly and yearly projections. And debt to equity ratio. Leslie, I want to let you talk about debt to equity ratio a little bit, if you could, because that's not one of my stronger points, but I know as a banker, you can talk all about that.
Thanks, Clint. So far, so good. Debt to equities, there's all formulas in banking, so they don't want you to have more debt to equity. So your equity are your total assets minus your total liabilities. And the debt to equity is a formula that outstanding liabilities divided by the equity. And typically, you don't want to be more than, well, most cases, when I was doing lending, 1.25 to 1. So the bank doesn't want you to have more than $1.25 for every dollar you have in equity and debt, basically. So that's a formula they use to see if you have the ability also to service the debt, which is part of cash flow. How many of you are in business? Do you own businesses? I forget what I heard. Are you trying to borrow? I'm just curious. Are people trying to borrow? Sorry, you've had them in the past.
Two of us run a nonprofit.
Okay. So you'd look at your liabilities, that's debt. Debt equals liabilities divided by what the net worth of the company is when you're trying to borrow. And so the lenders have a certain ratio for that.
The next C is capital, and this is your equity, or as we call it, skin in the game. There's no such thing as borrowing 100% of your project costs. You have to have some skin in the game. It's usually 10 to 35%, depending upon the other parts of your pro forma. So it's your part of the project that you have to use as kind of like equity to get the loan. So it can't be borrowed or have elements of debt, and it has to be owned. So if you got a rich relative that's going to lend you some money, it's not really a gift unless they declare it as a gift. If they're just lending you money, that's really not equity, that's really debt, because you're going to pay them back probably. So, that's some of the things about capital. And capital is really difficult for startups. Startups are a greater risk, and we'll talk about startups a little bit more, later this evening. Collateral require at least two methods of repayment, by your bank. The primary one is for the business through its cash flow, pay off the loan. And the second one is income or assets from the borrower. That could be equity, it could be collateral, things that you have, outside the business. And it's a legal mandate for the lender. For a bank to make a loan without any collateral is just not good. Loan officer will probably get in a lot of trouble if they try to make a loan without any collateral. And there's two types of collateral. There's liquid and what we call illiquid, or what I call non-liquid. Liquid is simply cash. You've got it. It's right there. It's a stock, it's a bond. It's something that you can real quickly and easily convert into cash. Real estate is not liquid because real estate may take time for you to sell, especially in conditions where there's a recession and people aren't investing and they're not buying anything. So that's not a liquid collateral. So that's something to remember, is liquid and non-liquid collateral. Conditions, okay. That's kind of like the conditions of the economy, whether it's locally or nationally. For example, during COVID, would have been a really difficult time to take out a loan for a restaurant because why? They were not considered essential and they had to close. So that would not be the time to go down to your banker and say, I want to make a loan for a new restaurant. And then also interest rates. We're in a trend now where interest rates have been going up, up, and up. They're probably going to continue to go up, although I think they're going to level off soon and maybe go down. But knowing that, you just have to be worried about those conditions. In 1981, I had a loan approved for a project that I dearly loved, but interest rates at that time were about 14 to 18%, and they actually went above 20%. They went to 21%. So I actually, even though I got my loan approved, I turned it down because my pro forma showed that any interest over 12%, and I wasn't going to make any money. So even though I was granted the loan, I had to decline it because it was 18 to 21%, and that was just. So those are some of the conditions you have to worry about. You also have to worry about competition. Is there a lot of competitors in the same type of business? I think we all look back. We all went to those VHS, those video stores.
Right.
When the ones that first came out, they were making money hand over fist. It's like when they first came out with racquetball clubs and things like that. first in was, you made lots of money. And pretty soon, everybody had a video store or a video stand somewhere in the back of their business or the side of their business, whatever. Or pretty soon, every apartment complex had a little gym or a racquetball court. So the competition just got so much that there just wasn't any profit left anymore because everybody was trying to undercut everybody else. So, and then you have to think about the type of business. Like, again, I'll go back to the video stores. They were really great for a while, but pretty soon they got taken out, and that was, so you have to look at the industry. Is this a good time to invest in it, or is it a bad time? Is this industry growing, or is it dying? Things like that. So, and then we also look at, the conditions you're experiencing in the business. Are you a newcomer to the houseboat business, or are you a veteran, whatever. And so, those are things that you have to really, be concerned about. Okay, moving on, character. That's just something about yourself. You have a long record of paying your bills. Are you good for it? Things like that. Obviously, the lender wants to know who they're doing business with. So they're going to want to know things like personal financial statement. They may want a resume or a short bio. They might know something about your education, industry reputation. If you've been a car dealer for a long time versus a short time, they may want to know how experienced you are. Credit score, that FICO score that I mentioned, they're going to want to know something about that. And of course, the business's credit history. If you've got an established business and the business, has the business paid its bills on time? Does it have a credit card? Are those paid on time? Things like this here. So those are some of the character issues that are associated in making loan. And the 5 C's all work together, and they form that FICO score that basically determines your credit worthiness. Is Cheryl a good person to go on? Is she going to be good for it? Small towns, people will look at like Cheryl's family. They'll probably know, well, I know her dad, John.
You okay?
Yeah, right. Declined, right? But it's really kind of, but those factors work together, and they're especially important in a small town where a lot of people know each other. So some things to remember, we talked about equity. Cash flow is number one. They all say cash is king, but the people factor is probably one of the second most important things in making a loan. Your credit history, your family, educational experience, things like that, so, and collateral is important too. If your business doesn't produce the cash flow, you have money in savings, you have some collateral, you own real estate, you have different sources of income that you can rely upon, things like that. And you have to be specific with the use of funds. You don't want to just go in and say, and ask for a loan. You need to go and say, I need a loan to buy so-and-so equipment so I can expand my sales, or I want more operating capital so I can hire a marketing director, and all about marketing, things like that. Sometimes you need marketing to expand your business. So there's a cost to selling more. That's, marketing and advertising is part of that. So anyway, timing, as I mentioned before, we all think we can go into the bank and in one conversation, we're going to convince the banker, we're going to convince Leslie that, I'm pretty inexperienced, but I only need $300,000 and I'd like it by next week because I've already signed a lease. And this has actually happened. I've been contacted by people, not here in California, but this is in Nevada. People would call me and say, I signed a lease and I need a loan really bad. It's not going to happen quickly. You might have to sweat 6 months of lease payments before that loan's going to come through, if it comes through. And if it doesn't come through, then you're probably really in a deep spot. There's going to be a lot of documents that are going to be required. Business plan, right, Leslie? You're just gonna need a good business plan, and that's gonna have to show all aspects of your business, tax returns, personal financial statements, resume or a bio. They just wanna know a little bit about you. It's like, God, Karen, if you were a banker and you didn't know me, and I just walked in and said, I need $500,000, and you would ask, and who are you again? And do you live here? I mean, what's your, things like that. So, and of course, part of your business plan is gonna be, your financial projections, pro forma, as I call it, things like that, so. Anyway, the documents that we require as advisors, if you have an existing company, we're gonna want like maybe 3 years of company P&Ls, profit and loss statements, a most recent balance sheet. Balance sheet is basically, and I think, I don't know, if Leslie, you mentioned it, but it shows your assets and liabilities and basically comes up with your net worth. Personal financial statement, credit score, business plan, so that's pretty standard. But as an advisor, we're gonna want those things to look at, so we know who we're dealing with. If we're gonna go to bat for you, at your bank, we wanna know those things about you too. Here are some potential deal killers when it comes to lending. Maybe you've had a bankruptcy in the last 5 to 10 years, or you've defaulted on a government-backed loan in the last 10 years. Defaulting on a government loan is usually kind of a deal breaker in a lot of ways. So, or if you've defaulted on an SBA-backed loan, felony conviction, kind of goes back to the character again. If you have judgments or garnishments filed against you that may say something about your character or what shade of character you have, but legal problems. You're in the middle of a lawsuit and you want to take out a $500,000 loan, it's probably not a good time to do that. Or you have a lack of profits in the last year, so that may indicate that you're in trouble, and that's, loan officers hate to give loans to people who are anxious, full of anxiety, and obviously in trouble, financially and things like that. So your desperation usually shows a lot, so. When it comes to making the loan, the lenders and the underwriting criteria, they all use the 5 Cs, as I mentioned. All your banks, credit unions are federally regulated. They have some of the most severe criteria. They look for borrowers with good credit scores, long time in business, a lot of direct experience, high level of cash flow to debt that Leslie just talked about. Something to remember is credit is an asset and you really need to protect it. And if it's not high enough, we can help you raise that credit score. We may not be able to get it up to where you need right away to that credit worthiness, but we can also give you a plan in a time frame for maybe we think we can get it to that point. So all is not lost if you can't go in and make a loan. Your business idea should stand some test of time, and good things are happening to those who are willing to wait and work hard and establish that credit. So the better your credit, probably the better credit terms you're going to get. Lower credits probably going to maybe end up in a little bit higher, interest rates, things like that. We've heard about payday loans and things like this. There are people that prey on people who are desperate. They're living not even from paycheck to paycheck, and so they make a lot of loans that really just take all the profit out of a business. So, savings. Don't spend your savings on a business. If you've got money in savings, leverage it. And back me up on this, Leslie. If you got savings, put it in the bank and borrow against it, rather than just throw it in. Because once you throw it in, it's gone. If you borrow against it, because it's an asset, remember, it's cash and is an equity. It's an asset. So if it sits in your checking account, then if things don't go right, then you can always take that. You have that as a reserve, but try not to use your savings, for a loan. And please try never to use a credit card. I know there may be times like, okay, you got a check coming in, a big receivable coming in a short amount of time, in a couple of days, yeah, maybe you can use it, but for the most part, never use a credit card if at all possible. Like I said, cash is an asset, protect it, leave it in the bank. You know, once you spend it, it's gone. It has no more value because it's gone. It disappeared, you know, so. Startups. Most banks don't make loans to startup companies. It's rather unfortunate because we have a lot of great entrepreneurs, people who probably have started up other businesses and been successful, but banks just don't like to lend to startups. And a startup is what? It's a business that has less than 2 years of an IRS tax returns. So most banks won't. I shouldn't say most banks, but a lot of banks won't lend to startups, but some do. A lot will go back to your 5 Cs. If the banker's familiar with you, they've seen you perform before, they may say, I can bet on Karen, she's good for it, she started other business and she did well, you know, so there may be exceptions, you know, but the reasons for not lending to startups is, I mentioned early in the discussion that 60 to 80% of businesses go out of business in the first 5 years. So there's a risk there. You have no operating history in a new business, you've got no profits or cash flow, you're always going to have short-term losses. No one starts out making a profit on the first day, or everybody would be having businesses. Nobody would be working for anyone else. It just doesn't work that way. And we have to climb up the ladder until we hit that positive cash flow. And it depends. It could be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. Leslie, what's probably an average time for businesses to go from startup to maybe cash flowing in a positive? 6 months, 9 months?
Yeah, that sounds right. I mean, that it based on their projections and the industry type, of course, depending on what kind of cash flow they're going to be able to generate, because a high receivable company could put themselves out of business quickly if they're not also the collector. You know, the small business owner has to wear all the hats.
Yeah.
So I think it's the answer is by industry. Sorry.
Yeah, but anyway, no business. Very few businesses will earn profits the first day. It just doesn't happen, you know. So, but you know, that's okay if that's in your business plan, that you're going to go in the red for a little bit, but you have the operating capital to handle that. And then eventually your sales climb up to the point where now you have a positive cash flow. And now you get into that black area where you can make your monthly loan payments. You can pay all your operating costs and cost of goods sold and things like this here. So you're really in a good position, but it's always a risk, because if you think, okay, I'm going to be in the red for 3 to 6 months, and then after that I'm in the clear, and then all of a sudden there's a 911 incident, there's a pandemic, you know, all of a sudden there's a housing crash, you know, all the factors that you probably didn't see coming, and all of a sudden you're in a horrible economic climate, and your business plan just isn't going to work, and it isn't going to cash flow in the first 3 to 6 months, you know. So maybe it's going to take a year to a year and a half or something. So are you going to have enough operating cash, you know, set aside to handle that? So
What are the main techniques that when people are starting a business and they don't have, they don't have a lot of cash? So what are the main techniques people do if they think they have a really good idea, they want to get going on something?
It's all over the board. It can be family, friends, it can be savings, it can be collateral, any number of things. We have people all the time that really have great ideas, and they're hardworking, ethical people who are probably gonna make a go of it, but they lack cash. So family members, I see it all the time in Greenville. I see people sometimes using a family member to help them. It can be a parent, family member. And sometimes you just have to wait another year and put some money away, and discipline yourself to maybe save the money. So those would be the primary sources, I would think. Leslie, anything you want to throw into that question?
There is crowdfunding, if anybody's heard of Indiegogo or Kickstarter. Some folks even use GoFundMe, but I'm used to GoFundMe being like for personal injury or personal accident or something, but people do that to raise funds. So there are some parameters involved with that. You have to pick the dollar amount that you need, and then you have to get that amount of money in order for Kickstarter to give you that money. And there's different incentives. It's a pretty cool concept, but people can donate to your Kickstarter or your Indiegogo account, and that could generate the funds you need for the startup. So what we like to do is when we have a client, when Clint has a brand new client, the business plan is key. What are your projections? What are your assumptions? What do you think your expenses are going to be? How much money do you really need? So total project cost a lot of times is where an entrepreneur doesn't start at that point. They're like the shoelace situation that we see. They just sign the lease and then they get a credit card, and that's very difficult to unravel. So you could have the crowdfunding, you could have everything that Clint said, you could have an investor, or I was thinking maybe a landlord that was so interested in you being in their space that maybe they give you 6 months free rent. I've seen that where, you have to do some leasehold improvements or something and the landlord's participating. So that's sort of an investment as well.
There's angel investors too, but generally they take, for their investment, they take a pretty high percentage. One source that is not available that people hear all the time is grants. You hear this thing like, buy this book for $75 and we'll show you all the grants that you're eligible for. Maybe if you're a nonprofit, or maybe you had a business that was that experienced some downturns because of COVID, and the government happens to be giving you grant monies for situations like that. Like that did actually happen, but for the most part, every day there's just not grant monies out there to start a business.
So do you remember what was it? I can't remember that organization that I think it made a loan to Amy Carey when she did the snow machine, sort of. I can't remember that. Anyway.
Was it RCAC maybe?
No, it was I know it's an international kind of startup funding, small grants, and actually people donate to it, and then they use that money to, I can't remember what it'll come back to me. I'll ask Amy Carey, but she got a $5,000 loan. This was just to get a piece of equipment, basically.
Yeah.
She paid it back.
You can also approach some foundations. And again, I think wherever you go, you're going to probably need a strong business plan. You're going to need a pro forma that says, this business is viable and here is why. I've charted out all my expenses. I know I'm going to lose money for a certain amount of time, but then I'm going to make money, that type of a thing. I've got certain type of skin in the game. I've got a good interest rate. The conditions are good, that type of a thing. So it's always nice to have that business plan, even if you're going to get it from a relative. They're going to want to know why you think that the business is going to flourish. So.
I have one other question. So are there like community investment banks, CDFIs that I don't know, what is it called?
RCAC is one of them.
Oh, RCA and Northern California Community Loan Fund.
Yeah, State of California has a loan fund, right?
But I don't know, some of them do startup monies for the small businesses, but some do nonprofits. So I don't know if you know of any of those.
I know RCAC will do startups.
What is RCAC?
Rural Community Assistance Corporation. They're based out of Sacramento. They actually do a lot of lending in this area. Leslie, are you familiar with RCAC?
Yes. Yep. So to answer your question too, for the nonprofits that are in the room, this is all good lending information, but just FYI, Sierra Small Business Development Center and the Small Business Administration does not lend to nonprofits. So I also wanted to just share that you can go and check with like California Nonprofits. They have a lot of support as well. You can go to grants.gov. And again, I don't know how to differentiate between whose making grants or loans to nonprofits and who's not. But then the CDFIs, you can just look for CDFI list of CDFIs in California. That's right on the website. And there
Yeah.
are,
I don't have a business, but there are some CDFIs that give to for-profit businesses.
right,
And I should
Right.
also mention that SBDC generally works, we work for-profit businesses. SCORE works a lot with the nonprofits, right, Leslie?
yeah, I was going to
SCORE.
mention SCORE, Service Corps of Retired Executives, so score.org. Could assist from a mentoring standpoint in all the services that we provide. They're funded by the SBA as well, but they aren't restricted. Then they can work with nonprofits. So it's nice to have a mentor in your back pocket, because being connected, I think, is the key. I'm just interjecting here, but you're part of the chamber. That's awesome. I mean, are you on the county newsletter distribution? Are you connected with a nonprofit foundation? It's just so that all the information that's available, that's being disseminated, is coming right to your inbox. I think that's the key. What we found through the pandemic is a lot of people are not, quote unquote, plugged in, like just working in a silo. And I know you probably have an association for nonprofits, California Association of Nonprofits or something. So that's where a lot of the information relative to what grants are coming up or who's lending or who's doing this or that. It's just, I think, really important to have as much quote unquote junk coming into your email that you can sort through to find out, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. State of California, just get plugged into where the information flows, I think is key.
And the SBA guaranteed loans are available for startup companies. SBA has several types of loans. One of them is a disaster loans, which is a direct loan from the SBA, but most of the other loans are guaranteed loans by the SBA from your bank. So you actually make the bank loan with the bank. SBA just comes behind it and guarantees it, again, based on pro forma, business plan, your 5 Cs, creditworthiness, and things like that. Leslie, do you want to just talk about couple different types of SBA loans? I know there's a 504 and it's a 701, just real quickly.
Sure. What I wanted to share for sure is that the Small Business Administration has a product called the SBA Community Advantage Loan, and they will accept, and it's by lenders. The SBA they guarantee the loan, so you have to be an approved SBA lender. And again, SBA doesn't, to the best of my knowledge, make loans to nonprofits. But if you're a small business or someone has a small business or wants to start a small business, the SBA Community Advantage Loan requires a business plan, 2 years of projections of income and expenses, and then everything that Clint said about the 5 Cs. Do you have good credit? Is your idea realistic and attainable? And does the lender feel as if they can actually verify this? So you'd have to check where they quote sources of information, or you do the math on what their assumptions are. Like restaurants are sort of the easiest, even though they're the highest failure. You only have so many tables in a restaurant, so they're called tops, and how many people sit at the top, and how often do you turn the table, and what are your hours of operation, and what's your average ticket per customer? That's really simple math. That's how that kind of works out to determine if it's realistic and attainable. So that would fly for every industry, every business. And there are a lot of community advantage loans that are made. They go up to, I think, $350,000. The other product the Small Business Administration has is 7A, which is for all small business ventures for equipment or working capital. Typically, you can buy real estate with the 7A, and then the 504 is a split program with the lender and the SBA. The SBA sells a debenture, so there's a bond market involved, but it's only for purchasing real estate and sometimes equipment, which would include fixtures. So the two products are different rates, pretty much the same term, 25 years for. So the beauty of the SBA product for a small business owner that wants to maybe buy a building or buy equipment is that the term of the repayment is much longer than a commercial loan product. So commercial lender, you buy equipment, you probably have to pay back in 3 years. SBA, you get a 10-year amortization. So it eases the repayment on the small business owner so their cash flow isn't squeezed as much. And of course, they're going to want a deposit relationship. And that was the other thing I was going to share, Clint, when, you know, the lender looks at an application, they typically want a deposit relationship. So if you're already depositing with them, they already know who you are. So it's not always difficult to get a loan. We're not walking in blindly saying, I want to borrow money. You have a relationship already. And then the bankruptcy, I just wanted to share too. There are some exceptions sometimes relative to medical bills, medical bankruptcy, because that can all be documented. And sometimes in a divorce bankruptcy, they will look for the decree. The lender wants to see the decree and find out what your what your responsibility is relative to the divorce. But as far as credit, there's some lenders, your FICO score is good enough. That's kind of a personal loan. But if a small business owner is a sole proprietor, we share with them too, go check with your bank. Maybe you can get a $30,000 loan based on your FICO score. So everything is risk rated. Like how much is the bank going to lose potentially? And that's all risk rated. So the smaller the loan, the easier it is to approve, just sometimes on the FICO score. So even though it's a personal loan, they then bring that money into the small business. So that is considered, and there would be a promissory note. We encourage them, if they're sole proprietor, if they did borrow the money personally, to make the business sign a promissory note that that money is owed, due and payable to that owner who's the personal guarantor on the note.
Leslie made a point that have a relationship with your banker, and I think that's really critical. I always tell my clients when we're working on their business plan, that to go in and talk to the banker and tell them that you're developing a business plan, you want to start a business, and you do want to come and talk to them about a potential loan. So give them just a little bit of a heads up, so that instead of just coming in as a stranger and saying, here's my business plan, I need a couple $100,000, they know something about you, they know what you want to do. You've already told them that what your plans are. So establish that relationship. And like Leslie said, if you're already a depositor, if you've been using that bank to put in all your checks or any other income you have or something like this, they know something about it. So that's good. Leslie, I'm going to just talk about microloans for a little bit. Oftentimes they can be unsecured if they're not too big. Microloans usually don't exceed 50,000, correct?
Right, correct.
So microloans are small loans that they're really, I think, can be a good loan for a lot of people. I know when I was with the USDA in 2009, we didn't have microloans for any of our farmers and ranchers, and we got a face full of comments like, "Why don't you have microloans? I've got an 800 credit score. All I need is $20,000 to buy a used tractor, and instead you want this regular loan and it's all this paperwork. I just want $20,000 for a piece of used equipment." And so we started developing that, and we were very successful with that. But microloans are a really, really good way to, I think, get started with the bank, and they're pretty, I won't say seamless, Leslie, but they're probably, you can fast track a microloan much easier than a regular 504 loan, right?
Yeah, the criteria for that, and they're all done by the CDFIs. You knew about the CDFIs. The microloans are handled by that. And they can write their own, like every lender can write their own credit policy. If they're an SBA lender, they have to follow the Small Business Administration standard operating procedure. And I knew that very well in the day, but it's still subject to interpretation in some instances, just like any Federal Register writing, right? But the micro lenders, no SBA lender can, and they have to be approved by the Small Business Administration also to be a CDFI, but no one can be declined a loan based on lack of collateral, which is really hard for a lender to do. So they might find another way to decline the loan. But if the cash flow's there, like Clint said, it is great. Like I have a client, she's a young gal who was doing bartending, private party bartending during COVID. The whole thing shut down. She lost everything. And so she started and invented this Michelada rim drink salts, like on a margarita, you just have salt. Well, she invented all these different flavors, and we connected her with the micro lender, and they gave her $50,000 based on her existing bartending business, which was profitable. So good for her, for sure. That's another key point, is that, you know, everybody's sort of taught like pay as little taxes as possible. Well, that's always going to bite somebody in the butt when it's like, well, I make more than that. Well, you're not showing it. You're not paying the IRS. The IRS is a sister agency of the SBA. So it's not going to happen. That's another thing we have to coach our clients on, is like, you have to pay taxes if you're going to be ready for the next opportunity. So this young lady did, and she was profitable, and they based the decision, which is out there, on a startup expansion, and approved it. So all of her 5 C's lined up, but that was essentially a startup. So it was a little bit easier and quicker for them to be able to approve that than in the standard underwriting.
And as we mentioned before, Leslie, you know, having experience in the industry goes a long way. That's part of the 5 C's, you know. I wanted to talk about bankers and underwriters for a little bit, because I think sometimes bankers get a bad rap. Bankers are really your advocate inside the bank. They don't want you to fail. They're going to want you to get the best possible loan for your business so you can succeed. It doesn't behoove the lender to have your loan go bad. It's a mark against them. It hurts them, and you don't want the loan to go bad either. So, and as an advisor, we don't want your loan to go south either. So, you know, so bankers and underwriters, you know, really, when they look at your business plan, they want you to succeed. So don't think that they're there just to take advantage of you. They're not. They're trying to succeed, and bankers actually are really a great networking source, believe it or not. They've seen it all, right, Leslie? They have a lot of experience, you know, so, and bankers will look again for 2 ways for the loan to get repaid. One is the business cash flow we talked about, and the other could be equity, collateral, whatever. So some things to remember: equity is a factor in all lenders' decision-making. You know, that's your skin in the game. So cash is king, or whatever type of liquid equity you have. You know, so that's just really important. A couple other things that I wanted to talk about is, I mentioned this before, never use a credit card if possible. So stay away from that if at all possible. Your banker, if you want to make a loan and they don't make that type of loan, they'll probably refer you to another bank. For example, in small communities, there's a lot of banks that don't do ag loans, but they'll tell you who does. You know, so there's just some banks that just don't make agricultural loans. It's just kind of outside their wheelhouse, and they don't want to get involved in that. It's not anything against you, but that's just probably the criteria they have, is to make maybe small business loans or home loans or things like this here, but not ag loans. And like I said, bankers are a really good networking resource. If you're gonna be making a loan, it won't hurt to go in and talk to your banker on occasion, even before you make that loan. You're talking. Other things to remember: your business plan is still that key to the process. You write a business plan so you can do what? So 1, you can get financing. 2, so you can become a better manager, and number 3, so you know all aspects of your business. But probably the most important reason to write a business plan is to prove the viability of your project or your idea. And this is where you can do it. So that's why it's so critical, and you have to really be convincing. And when you write a business plan, probably the most important thing is that executive summary. It is a sum of all the parts. It should never be more than, 2 pages, of 1 to 2 pages, or a page and a half. It's your chance to shine, because I have to tell you, you walk into a bank, and if you have an active loan officer sitting there, he may have a stack of business plans there on his desk that he wants to go through. And the first thing they're going to do is read, the executive summary. they're gonna tell from that executive summary if this business plan is weak, or if it's strong, if it's got a chance, or like, if it's one of those, they may put it on a pile that they'll read next week. But if you really can't get their interest and they're excited, then they're gonna wanna put this on a different file, and they're gonna wanna get to it as soon as possible. So your business plan and your executive summary is really, really important. You'll have to know in your business plan, how you're gonna keep your loan current, how you're gonna repay it, all those things, how you're gonna adjust for any downturns or any unexpected things that come along, your plan B, that type of a thing. So those are important. I'm just gonna go over some scenarios that put up red flags to lenders. Borrower who's been denied by multiple lenders but wants one more lender to give him a shot. The borrower wants debt, but he has neither profits or cash flow, wants a loan larger than what the client should rationally use. He is a high-risk business with little equity, minimal collateral, limited management experience. Leslie just talked about this lady who lost everything in the pandemic, but she came up with some new ideas because she had experience in the industry. So, and of course, if you had major credit problems in the last, 5-10 years, those are things that bankers are always concerned about. Someone comes in and says, I need a loan now, but I have no plan, no financials, or no pro forma. So I guess my question would be, do the three initials DOA mean anything to you? So, and my FICO score is 550. That's really low. So you're gonna have to get that up. And Leslie, what are the ways that we can help do that? Because I know you can go to Experian Boost. Are there other ways to help boost the credit score?
That's the main one. I think the other one was like to try and pay down some of the debt, because the factors relative to a FICO have to do with, say, if you have a $10,000 credit card, if your balance is a 9,900, that's bad. That's what affects the score. So if somebody can actually manage the payoff, Experian Boost helps because it allows you to input paying your regular utility bills, which isn't reported on a credit report. They're like, oh, okay, you pay on time. So you have the ability to add additional bills into the formula. And it's moved some points up. But anybody that's trying to boost is usually maxed out on the credit cards, typically. So that's what this helps. It doesn't raise it at like 100 points or anything.
And Experian is one of the three, right? Credit. What are the other two again?
TransUnion, and I forget the other one, another T, I think.
I also wanted to mention something. Some people have a lower credit score than probably what they should have, simply because they have this they have this history of paying for everything in cash. And so they don't have an extensive record of paying things, but they made the house payment, they made the utilities payment, so that's how you can go in and use those things and say, look, this is a very reliable customer. He's making house payments for 15 years, so he's not a delinquent type person. Here's another red flag. You've had a bankruptcy and you fail to tell your banker. You have to be honest. And like Leslie said, there's some bankruptcies that are a little bit more acceptable. Medical, or divorce, and things like this here. There's some things that just go beyond your character that happen to you, and you can get some allowances for that. And this one I mentioned before. I signed a lease for a new space before I had a loan. Oops. That's kind of a no-no. So I never read the agreements, like maybe the terms of the lease, like, oh, they're going to go up after the first year or second year, things like this here. If I was a banker and someone says, well, I never read the agreements and I'm getting taken out on a bad deal here, it's like, well, you obviously you're someone who lacks detail. You're not protecting yourself. So you've got to do that. And here's another reason, when we're talking about agreements, part of any business venture should be having a team. And who's your team? It should be your banker, should be your accountant, should be your insurance person, and maybe your marketing person or HR. Leslie, wouldn't those be the top 3 to 5? Banker, insurance, and lawyer, so if you sign agreements so that that you have to pay a little money up front, but now you know that you're not gonna get in trouble for it, something like that, so really, really, really important. Here's another red flag, I don't have enough equity to meet the down payment requirements. Well, pretty hard to start the loan process if you're not gonna have enough equity or skin in the game, as we say, so. Or, I don't want to provide any personal guarantees. That's usually a no-no, it's a deal breaker oftentimes. I think for for an SBA back loan, don't you usually have to put up your house for it, right, Leslie?
Well, not necessarily. You're definitely going to have to guarantee it if you're an organization like an LLC or corporation. Like I said, SBA cannot decline a loan based on collateral. And so the old story is they want everything plus your firstborn. But, if the house doesn't have any equity, why does the SBA want it? They're not going to want to foreclose on it and have to take out the first as well. So yes, typically that's looked at as collateral, but depending on what you're trying to borrow the money for, if it's equipment, then the equipment can potentially secure the loan. So I can't say automatically the house is going to be taken, but it's going to be looked at as collateral, of course.
So that's the end of my presentation on lending. I'm sorry we don't have any business owners here, but if we could maybe do this.
We have
Other
Cheryl.
than Cheryl, if we could get this, to fly again sometime, maybe with more advanced publicity, get flyers in the
Yeah, no, I
town
think that it's important.
and stuff like that,
Better
I
weather.
agree, yeah, I mean, speak for both of us. We interface with, and are going to be interfacing with a lot of business owners. And these business owners are gonna have challenges. We already named the COVID, the fires we didn't name, but just the economy, the downturn, the inflation, and we primarily support lodging providers, but peripheral providers and all types of businesses will be interfacing with. So the more I can learn, the more Karen can learn, the better we could service and add value to our own program. And so this has been very helpful.
Is it the Marines or the Army that says, be the best you can be? And I always think of that about a business, because.
Be all you can be.
Be all you can be.
It was Marines.
Look at what's happened to businesses just in the last several years. I mean, we had the Great Recession, which took out a lot of businesses, and a lot of businesses just struggled for years and years, but then you had the pandemic, and then we had the Dixie Fire. And so what do we chase that with? Inflation, high gas prices, high rent, housing is off the charts, food prices have
Perfect
gone up.
storm, yeah.
And then we have a month of horrible weather, roads are closed, businesses are closed. It's like, how much worse could it get? So you really have to be prepared, and you have to be as adept to being creative, and sometimes, coming up with innovative and creative ways to stay in business, So it's like, I really like that example, Leslie, of that lady that worked in a bar, and she just put her creative genius to work. And she
It's
came
called
out.
the pivot. Everybody, was the key word. If I had a nickel for every time I heard the P word, pivot, in the last 3 years. So that's what happens. An innovator turns and makes a change. All of our brick and mortar retail stores had to learn how to create an e-commerce store. So we were able to help them with that, created a website, and they were able then to sell all the inventory that they'd bought for the spring when they were shut down in, they paid for it in December, had all the spring inventory, were shut down in March of 2020. So e-commerce stores were huge. I did just want to share, if I could, because for the nonprofit sakes, there is a National Council of Nonprofits.org. I don't know if anybody's connected to that, but it's a pretty good website that has additional resources and different practice pointers and additional resources right on that website. And then I was wondering if you remember, Karen, was it grantwatch.com? Grantwatch.com is also like an international
Yeah, and we're really
lender for
but
nonprofits and small business grants was on here. So I was just searching while you guys were chatting. But also this is being recorded, so I'm not sure, Cheryl, how you're gonna deal. Is it gonna be on the chamber website, or maybe, I don't know if we capture it, Clint, you can post it for other small businesses so they have access to it. That was a really good idea to record it, I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and get this up on the chamber website if I can, but
Great.
Leslie, real quick question. I know that there's a lot of business owners, including myself, that already own commercial property. Would the SBA 504 product be something that could cover repairs or renovations or improvements? Like ADA has been a huge problem in our area. ADA compliance.
Yeah. I think the SBA, even the 7A is available for that. So on a case by case, depending on how much is in the first lien position, what the mortgage is right now, and then what it appraises for. So what the equity position would be. And then from a construction standpoint, you'd need to have, contractor cost breakdown. The bank would monitor those funds, like nobody could just do the brother-in-law deal. The bank would manage all of the construction funds through one contractor through signed turnkey contract. But yeah, I think either product could potentially help with that.
Okay.
So I think you have my email. If you want to shoot me an email, let me know. But whoever's looking for those funds, just sign up and register as a client of ours and say that's what you're looking for, and we can certainly help.
Does Plymouth Bank do microloans?
I don't think micro.
Pardon me?
I don't think they do micro loans. They might do small loans.
Like, do they do like simpler loans like that? Or do they have to be?
Construction loans?
No, not construction loans, micro loans,
Micro
like up to
loans.
50,000.
They probably have a product that is a small dollar amount, but it's not, micro loan isn't, I think it's just a catchphrase for a small loan, but a micro lender is that's part of that CDFI arena where they're certified by the Small Business Administration.
They may also, depending upon how long you've been with the bank, give you a line of credit, which I've used.
Right,
I
yeah.
use Wells Fargo a lot, and I really like it because I always had it there. If you make out a loan and you pay it off, it goes away, it's done. If you want those funds back again, you have to take out another loan, where a line of credit.
Right.
I took out a line of credit for 25,000. I paid it off, and then it was just sitting there, and then 2 years later, I needed it for something else. It was there. I just went
Ready to
in.
go, huh?
Yeah,
That's
it
genius.
worked every day because I had the credit and the income, and so I just used it sporadically to buy different things. And it was just wonderful for me. It was a little bit higher interest rate, but it was easy access to capital. And it was very flexible for me. So depends upon, how long you dealt with Plymouth Bank. You may want to just talk to them about a microloan or a line of credit.
Yeah, well, I don't know, you said CDFIs. So Plymouth Bank isn't a CDFI, is that correct? They're
Correct.
community-
It is not a CDFI.
So, and so those are the ones, like, that's the ones you said are CAC, it's a CDFI? Okay, so it does the micro loan. I'm just looking if somebody was asking us.
Right,
And we say, oh yeah, there are these micro loans out there. And what would I say? Where do you go? Who do you talk to? That's my question.
Yeah.
Send them right to Clint.
Well, and
I mean, is it through Small Business Center? Would we send them to you?
We don't have any money. They can just look at CDFI online, CDFI, Certified Development Financial Institution, and it'll give them a list of who's approved. And currently RCAC is approved in our area. The next closest one is Sacramento, and the next closest one is Oakland. And then there are national CDFIs that can work in every state. ASEAN I'll send you a list if you like. I'll send Clint the list and he can forward it to you if he has your email.
Yeah, but I know the bankers here, so I can ask them about just that lending
Yeah, I can
criteria.
ask them too. I mean, you know, I
But
know.
yeah, but
But I'm just curious because
But
that seems like something
I
that's
really
important to
appreciate-
know, to
Yeah.
make it.
I appreciate the fact that you want to know, so you can pass
Yeah,
that
right.
information and those resources off to the business that you interface with, or your chamber member businesses, or whoever.
We're all about hand-holding when we go into these businesses, and if anybody's in a stressful situation or desperate financial straits, we'd like to, I think we're looking just for information on exactly where to send them. Whether that's a Google search or not, it may just be, but it'd be nice to be able to refer someone to a name, a warm body that can say, hey, all is not lost. Yeah.
They need to come to us. They need to come to us because they might have other needs and we can help them with the marketing and the
Best to
QuickBooks
go
and the
through you first.
access to capital is one of our highest requested
Okay.
intakes from a small business. So if they come to us at sierraspdc.com and register as a client, and you can handhold them, or you can send me an email introduction. I see everybody that intakes into our system so that they know who we are, we're legit, and it's not like an extra step, but they do have to create a profile because we have to prove to the Small Business Administration who funds us that we're actually helping these small businesses achieve their goals and collect economic impacts, which could be borrowing money, starting a new business, increase in sales, or hiring employees. So that's where we can help because we can dial for dollars for them. We can find them the lender.
That is great, yeah. Thank you.
And I was just gonna mention, Leslie, about, you mentioned it ahead of me, but economic impact. That is just crucial. I mean, in most of our the biggest economic impact is making a loan. You make a loan for $500,000, and that equates into business expansion, hiring additional employees, or, whatever it is. That could really have a tremendous economic impact on the business and on the community. So, yeah, that's why, and Leslie's right, if we can help in the lending process, that has tremendous economic impact. Of course, you gotta go through your 5 Cs, and you have to have that FICO score and
Sure.
all that good stuff, but if you've got a great idea, a great business plan, and we can access you with some capital, that's what makes the world go round.
Yeah,
So,
thank you for that question because we're very big on hand holding also. So we don't just say, yeah, call that number or call them. We're like, okay, introduce me, let me speak to them with you, keep me in the middle. And, I never speak on behalf of a lender because I'm not a lender, but it's easier for me to translate some of the jargon or the needs or the requests. So I'll get a copy of the, check application checklist, and we have other counselors who are also finance people, and we're also supported from Northern California SBDC. Our lead center is at Humboldt University, and they oversee the top 22 counties of California, where there are actually 6 small business development centers. We're just one of them, and they have a finance center. So they have counselors up there that all they do all day long is help with access to capital.
Okay.
Very
and
good,
that seems
that's
like
helpful.
it
Yeah.
was,
Leslie, that's great. You made my job easy.
Well, we're tired of being the best kept secret, that's for sure. I am anyway. I'm also in Seroptimist, a service organization. I don't know if there's one in Quincy or not, but I'm like 0 for 2. No one's ever heard of Seroptimist, and it's a 100-year-old community service organization.
Well, we have a few minutes left. I'm gonna use it up. Just, I guess, a couple things I want to talk about. One is, if we can all find ways to get more business people to attend these type of things. So we've got some ideas, Leslie, we talked about that before you came on.
I wonder if we should stop the recording, Cheryl, if it's going to be shared.
Thank you, Leslie. Let's get the top button. Thank you.
Recording.